Let's go back a millennium or so. On what they considered to be the very edge of the globe, a group of Vikings established a community. These days, we typically consider it to be this failing, frozen outpost. Even so, what if I told you that it wasn't a failure? What if it turned out to be a precisely calibrated mechanism made to not only survive, but flourish? To find out how this actually functions, let's open the hood. So, isn't it the key question? What was it like, really? Let's put aside the preconceptions, the horned helmets, and the cold wastelands for a while. We will, in a sense, put our feet on the ground and explore their world until it no longer feels like a historical document, but rather like a real, living place. Because picture yourself stepping into a fjord from a large ship. The color is what strikes you initially, not the cold. It's green, not white, and not a frozen desert, as one source so eloquently states. The hills would be covered in short grass, and the water would be dark and glassy. That one small detail completely alters the story. Okay, so you have to start from scratch in order to construct this new universe. First things first, you need to determine the terrain. Additionally, you need a roof that can withstand whatever the Arctic decides to throw at you. This is where we need to completely change the way we think. A fjord strikes us as, wow, pretty. However, this wasn't scenery to them. This was their system of highways. All of the farms were connected by these enormous canals. This was their main artery, their I-95, the lifeline for everything. What's at the exit ramp if you're sailing down this fjorded highway? After pulling ashore, you view these hills after a short stroll inland. But hold on, they're emitting smoke. And that raises a big question, doesn't it? What on earth are you using to build your homes if you have virtually no trees for lumber? The response is simply brilliant. The turf fortress is pure survival technology. Furthermore, this is much more than just a home. It's an entire plan. You have these extraordinarily thick turf walls. In essence, enormous bricks of insulating earth. A stone foundation at the bottom keeps moisture out. Furthermore, the structure is intended to be held down against those crazy northern winds by the weight of its own roof. No space is wasted within. It's a small device that was designed specifically to combat winter. All right, the command center is in that house. However, what is the driving force behind the entire operation? That's the farm. At this point, the logistics get extremely complicated. You must realize that your sheep in Greenland weren't there merely for a little cheese and milk. It was all of it. Your power, social standing, and bank account were all combined into your animals. Here's the catch, though. They were also the riskiest thing you could rely on, because everyone loses if your animals go hungry. So every summer, you conduct what is essentially a military operation. How do you safeguard your living, breathing bank account? The race against the clock is intense. There is just one thing to focus on during that brief, valuable summer. The hay equation must be solved. You cut, you dry, you stack, and you put your life on the line to protect it. Each and every one of those bundles represents another day of winter survival. Yes, let's clear our minds of any romanticized vision of a storybook farm. This logistics effort was high stakes and high stress. The numbers were everything, a merciless, never-ending calculation. Is there enough hay and storage to last the cows until spring? Every decision was weighed against the possibility of an extremely long winter. However, people cannot survive on math and logistics alone. It's one thing to survive. It's another thing entirely to build something lasting. This place had to be more than a series of survival camps if it was to endure. They needed to create a true civilization. So, how did they manage to do it? This is a crucial turning point in the narrative. It was about more than surviving the next season. They were establishing a community. These weren't merely transient settlers trying to get by. They were putting down roots. They intended to stay. What is the evidence? How can we be certain they were thinking long-term? You only need to look toward the church. You see, constructing a church, no matter how small and unassuming, makes a powerful statement. It says, "We're here to stay. This is where the town gathers." Marriages are recognized here. Deaths are remembered here. News is shared here. It strengthens their shared identity. Your day begins even before sunrise. People step out of the turf houses and immediately get to work, fixing tools and tending animals. By midday, hay is being cut, turned and stacked in the fields, creating an assembly line of activity. Every movement is a race against the winter ahead. In the afternoon, you might see a boat gliding down the fjord. That matters. It could be a neighbor. It could be news. Every interaction has value. And in the evening, as the light fades, someone checks the hay storage. They inspect it as if it were treasure. Because it is. That is Viking Greenland around the year 1000. Not an ice prison. Not a romantic myth. It was a deliberate, well-organized farming society. A machine, powered by hay, boats, and extraordinary discipline, carved out of turf and fjords. They built a system that worked almost perfectly for its time and place. A society balanced on a razor's edge. But it leaves us with one final, important question. How long can a machine like this last when your entire world is built under such extreme conditions?